All right, guys, welcome back. Today we're doing episode 3 of Trainer Talk with Grant and Colin and Grant. Today we're going to be covering the nutritional hierarchy of importance and what it means for you and your fitness goals. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to jumping. And you excited too, Colin?
My favorite part of all of my coaching is the nutrition aspect of it.
It's true. It's true. I
Getting
think
the
people don't realize. Oh, go ahead. What were you going to say?
getting them actually eating how much they should be, or
Yeah.
getting them like what they should be. It complete game changer.
Yeah. I think people don't realize how big of a role it has on fitness, and I think especially on weight loss. Like I was always under the impression when I was younger that like to lose weight you just had to do like a bunch of running or a bunch of cardio, and really like that's not the case. So I'm excited to kind of break this one down and show people that it's a lot. It boils down to a lot more simple of principles than most people kind of realize. So I'm going to go ahead and pull up this little graphic I have. So it's coming up right now. So this is the nutritional pyramid, the nutritional hierarchy of importance. And so you've probably heard of the food pyramid. I'm sure if you're watching this, you've heard of the food pyramid, but this is a little bit of a different idea. This is like kind of the real food pyramid, in my opinion, right, Colin?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like the food pyramid, first of all, for those of you who don't know, like the traditional food pyramid is basically garbage. Like it almost like it kind of misprioritizes the wrong things. I would almost completely invert it. Maybe not completely, but I would invert it like quite a bit from what it actually is. So it kind of focuses on refined carbs, grains quite a bit too much in particular. So that's why I'm not a fan of it.
Yeah.
But
Last I saw of it, it said like 25% of your plate should be protein, when in reality it should be 50, 60% of your plate should be protein.
100%. Yeah, 100%. Especially like, I mean, honestly, whether it's weight gain or weight loss, like what muscle gain or weight loss, depending on your goal, but either way, you still need that protein intake to be very high. Particularly with weight loss, I would say it's super important just because it gives you this satiety benefits. But obviously, like if your goal is to either build or maintain muscle, like you need to have that protein there, and that's where I think most people get it wrong. But we'll dive into all that in this pyramid here. So I don't know. Where do we want to? So let's start at the bottom, huh, Colin? I think that probably makes the most sense. Calories are the most important thing. So
100%.
yeah. So calories, right? So people don't realize like calories are simply a measure of energy, and this is why I say people that like weight gain and weight loss is a physics equation at the end of the day, and it really just boils down to that. So every day you are going to have a certain number of calories that you're burning through, not only through just like your body fulfilling its normal bodily functions, which is called your BMR, your basal metabolic rate. That's basically if you were to just lie in bed all day and do nothing, that would be still the number of calories that you burn every day, just for your body to maintain, just to maintain its current state. And then obviously, we're going to be moving around and we're going to be active each day, right? So, your total calories per day, which is your total daily energy expenditure, TDEE, that's going to be not oftentimes, it's always going to be higher than your BMR, assuming you're not just like literally sleeping the entire day. So that's that piece, and that piece is flexible, right? Like you can change your TDEE by either, doing longer workouts, doing more workouts, making your workouts more intense. There's a lot of different ways to do it, and there's good apps out there now that track it, or at least give you a reasonable kind of ballpark. I use Whoop. Do you use an app for this, phone or anything like that?
To track my BMR,
Yeah.
I roughly know what I need to be at.
Yeah.
And then, I mean,
Yeah.
depending on what I'm doing that day, I know I know me personally better on how much I should be eating depending on what I'm doing.
For sure. Yeah, for sure. I'm with you there. Yeah, it's what was I gonna say with that? Yeah, it's kind of like a trial and error thing. I agree for me too. Like, I mean, Whoop, it does track it, but I don't really pay too much attention to it. It is more of like a trial and error thing to figure out this number. And there's calculators out there that can help. I can actually link in the description of this video the calculator that I made that kind of goes through your current like your fitness goals, it asks your height, weight, gender, etc. And it basically figures out, okay, you should be eating this many calories per day in order to maintain the same weight. But essentially, like it's pretty easy to get at least a ballpark figure of where that should be. And then from there, realistically, weight gain or weight loss, it's just a calorie balance thing. I mean, that's all it boils down to at the end of the day. I think people are, we like to try and overcomplicate this and say like, oh, it's genetics, or oh, it's this, and this, and like, or like it's a hormonal thing or whatever. And like, for certain specific cases like that, those things can play a bit more of a role for sure. But by and large, like once you know roughly where that TDEE is, from there it's very easy to figure out like where you want to kind of go. So, if you want to gain weight, you need to be in a surplus. If you want to lose weight, you got to be in a deficit. So,
One thing, especially with calories, is I'm a big numbers guy. I love to
yeah,
use numbers for all my stuff. And 1 pound equals approximately 3,500 calories. And
yep,
so
yes,
if you weigh 180 pounds and you want to lose 10 pounds, I mean,
exactly,
multiply the 3,500 times 10, and you
yep,
have the exact number you need to know how much you have to deficit through. Granted,
exactly,
that is if you're already eating at what your maintenance level is, your TDEE, you
yep,
just subtract 250 a day, 500 a day, and
yep.
you will know exactly where you need to be at for calories.
Exactly. Yeah, that's literally the exact same way that I think about it too, Colin, except with like, so that 3,500 calories, right, equating to roughly 1 pound. If you divide that number by seven, that's 500 calories per day for a week. That would either gain or lose you 1 pound. So from there, it's just math, right? So you can say, if you know your TDEE, you know roughly where you're eating, and say you're like maintaining weight, which would mean you're eating roughly at your TDEE. If you want to gain 1 pound per week, then you're going to have to go into a 500 calorie surplus. If you want to lose 1 pound a week, you have to go into a 500 calorie deficit. Um, and I think it's easiest to think. It's easiest to think about it in day terms in a lot of cases. Although obviously, like there are certain scenarios, right? Like say you're doing like a once a week fast or something, right? Then in that case, it's a little different because say you eat 3,500 calories. Say that that's your maintenance. Let's just make this like a super simple example. Say your 3,500 is your maintenance level. If you eat at maintenance for those 6 days, and then day 7 you eat zero, then your weekly average is actually still 500 calories in deficit. So I think I did that math right. I'm pretty sure I did that math right. But what was I gonna say? But yeah, basically, you need to be in that deficit if you want to lose weight. You need to be in the surplus if you want to gain weight.
Yeah.
And it's like there are a few other things that go into the calorie piece, I guess, but like this is really kind of the biggest thing. One thing to kind of note is that especially if you were in a weight loss phase or a weight gain phase for a really long time, eventually like the calculation starts to change a little bit. There's a few things that go into that, but the reason why, like the reason why is because as your body weight changes, your maintenance level actually changes. In particular, the lighter you are, the fewer calories you need to maintain. The heavier you are, the more calories you need to maintain. So it's a good idea to just kind of periodically go back and look and say, oh, okay, like now that I've gained 30 pounds of muscle, or now that I've lost 30 pounds or whatever, like now it's like, okay, my calculation is going to be a little different. Like maybe I should start making tweaks. But yeah, that's basically the calorie piece. Anything to add there, Colin? Or I think we kind of nailed it.
Yeah, I think we nailed that on calories.
Yeah, cool. So let's move on to macros. So macros, there are three. Well, technically there are four, but there's basically only three. So protein, carbs, carbohydrates, and fat are the three kind of main macronutrients. Alcohol is also a separate macronutrient, but it's it's debatable whether we want to include that one or not. Obviously, it's not one that we want to be kind of structuring our diet around. Uh, unless you're just a total degenerate, but you probably don't want to be doing that. What was I going to say? So yeah, so macros are the next important piece. And I think this is like tying back into what we said earlier, right? About how protein consumption just makes such a big difference. Um, like protein is really where I kind of lay the foundation in my program with my clients on this one. Oftentimes, we won't even necessarily track carbs and fat unless the client really wants to. But protein is the one that we're going to track definitely the most closely and monitor the closest because it really plays a huge role with gaining and losing with gaining and maintaining muscle.
Yeah, especially, I mean, in terms of tracking it, with
Yeah,
whenever they're trying to build muscle, I like them to track their carbs a little bit more,
sure,
simply because carbs are what make your muscles get that fuller look. They're the
sure.
ones that are making your muscles pop a little bit more. And so
Yeah.
if a client's capable of tracking the carbs accurately, I prefer them to, but most of the time they don't understand that. They don't understand that potatoes are carb, but also so is a piece of candy. So they really underestimate or overestimate how much they're eating on carbs, and they're telling me they ate 1,000 calories of carbs this day, but in reality they had 200.
Yeah, the tracking error is definitely something that's kind of just always present, and it's a little tougher. Apps like MyFitnessPal make it a lot easier. I'm sure do you use MyFitnessPal with your clients as well, Colin?
Yeah, I have
MyFitnessPal.
all of them download my fitness pal. And
Yeah, exactly. So that stuff's all great. It helps a lot. It's much better than just trying to like completely eyeball it and estimate it because at least you can like search foods and say, okay, like if you're out to dinner and you eat a cheeseburger, at least you're not going to be just totally like kind of sticking a finger in the wind and trying to guesstimate it. You at least have like maybe some kind of a similar meal that's saved on there, and you can get a pretty good idea. But what was I going to say? Yeah, I think tracking protein is definitely the easiest. Sometimes tracking carbs and fat as well. But just like as far as just laying the groundwork with the habits, I like to just start simple. It's like, let's do protein, and then if we want to add on carbs and fats later, we can. We can talk a little bit. Maybe let's talk a little bit about kind of the importances of each one and like kind of the breakdown of each one as far as like the calorie count and all this stuff. So um, with protein, this is the reason a big reason why we prioritize protein. Obviously, it's like it's the building block for muscle, right? It's the you need to eat that protein if you want to build and maintain muscle. I think that's like pretty common knowledge. A lot of people know that. What a lot of people don't realize is that protein is also the most satiating macronutrient generally, which satiety basically just means, if I eat X amount of this food, how full am I going to feel? So let's consider like two kind of extreme opposite examples here. Let's consider like 500 calories of shrimp or 500 calories of lean turkey breast or chicken breast, or like 500 calories of lean ground beef, right? That is going to be a meal like that is going to be like very, very filling. Like you're gonna finish that meal and you are like maybe not gonna want to eat more. I mean, it depends on how big your appetite is. I just choose 500 as an example, but like 500 calories of that, like a chicken breast, you're probably gonna be feeling pretty full. Versus let's do an opposite case. A very low satiety food would be something like peanut butter or something like a lot of junk foods are very low satiety, which is why then this ties into like why the obesity rate is so high in America right now, in my opinion, is the junk foods and like the fact that they're just so easy to overeat and they're almost kind of designed that way, which is twisted and evil in my opinion. But I don't want to get into that. But the focusing your diet around protein, around those high satiety foods, that's why that's just so important for meeting your fitness goals, whether it's weight loss, whether it's building muscle. For weight gain specifically, like the foods that I really like to use with clients who are working on gaining muscle are foods that are high in protein but also somewhat calorie dense still. So things like maybe less lean cuts of meat, right? Like it's as opposed to like maybe like a 95-5 ground beef, like an 85-15 or like an 80-20 or something like that. Or maybe as opposed to chicken breast, do a chicken thigh. or kind of substitutions like that, where it's like you still get the protein, but it's also going to be a little more calorie dense because of the fat. But you understand what I'm saying, Colin?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I'm sure, Colin, you're because you pretty much only specialize with clients working to build muscle, right?
Yeah. Working to build muscle
Like I'm
more.
sure
So
it's a lot of the same. A
it's
lot of
really
the
just
same.
the same. And just incorporating more meats that are still high in protein, but they have that higher fat count. So, I mean, the 80-20 ground beef, chicken thighs compared to chicken breasts.
Yeah.
And then shrimp is surprisingly a little bit higher in fat than most people believe.
Hmm.
So,
I it probably depends on the type of shrimp because I've seen shrimp, I've seen like certain kinds of shrimp where it's almost completely protein, but
well,
it
let me
depends.
rephrase that. In the Midwest, the shrimp that I can find at the grocery store typically has a higher fat ratio than if you were to, live by a body of water.
Sure, sure, sure.
I
Yeah.
live next to corn and
Um,
beans, so
yeah, that's fair. That's fair. Another really good one, kind of in the same vein, is like canned tuna. Like that's another super lean, like pretty much just all protein. So those are those are really some good go-tos for people if you're like, I just need a high protein food that's like, very protein dense. I'm trying to lose weight and I'm trying to get my protein intake up. Like that's probably not probably like those are the best kinds of foods to be trying to focus your diet. But what was I going to say? There's something else. There's another direction I was going to go with that. Okay, protein. By the way, the calorie density of this. So it's 4 calories for every 1 gram of protein. So protein is 4 grams, 4 calories per gram. Carbs are also 4 calories per gram. Alcohol, I think, is 7 calories per gram. I could be wrong with that. Fat, I know for sure, is 9 calories per gram. So with protein and fat specifically, it's pretty easy to see the kind of the difference in satiety there. Like just from the calorie density alone, like that fat is almost over double for every 1 gram. So it's definitely you can definitely see the difference there. So that's protein. We covered protein a pretty good amount of detail. We can chat about carbs next. So carbs, this is one where I think like the more that I got into running training, the more important I realized that carbs actually were, because carbs are going to be your main fuel source for training and for athletics. So like yes, there is like the kind of the fat burning workouts, but essentially it's like your body is going to use up those carbohydrate stores first. And if you, especially if you prioritize carbs around your training, it can really give you a nice boost.
yeah, especially with carbs, because there's two types of carbs. You have the complex
Yeah,
carbs, then you have the simple carbs.
yeah,
And
let's talk about
so if you prioritize the simple carbs more under training, half an hour around it, half an hour before, you will get that energy boost more. So you have the honey, the maple syrup. I
that. Yeah,
mean, sugar is technically a simple carb. So planning
the
that more around before you train. I'm not saying you should have sugar before you train, but in
yeah,
terms of what a simple carb is, it fits into it.
yeah,
But prioritizing them simple carbs before. And
100%.
depending on where you're at on social media, you might see a lot of people eating Rice Krispie treats as they're training simply because that is a simple carb. The marshmallow in there, the sugar that it contains, it will digest fast in your blood system. It will give you that small little boost of energy
Exactly.
that you're looking for to push out the extra set or extra rep or two.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly, Colin. And that's like, I think you pretty much hit the nail on the head there with the difference, right? So complex carbs, kind of on the other hand, those are carbs that are going to take much longer to digest. Maybe, it depends on the exact carb, but it could be anywhere from like hours to maybe even up to like close to a day in certain cases. But basically, you know, the complex carbs. So I learned about this, especially when I was training for the marathon this year. I realized that like the days leading up to the marathon, I started loading up on complex carbs because that would essentially elevate my glycogen stores leading into the race. Glycogen is basically the way your body stores those carbs, and that's kind of the way it uses that energy in your body. So
Maybe if you load it up on a little bit more glycogen, you'd hit 600 already.
oh man, you're probably right, man. I don't know. I tried 600. This is an aside for those of you who don't know. I've been trying to 600-pound deadlift. It's been living rent free in my head for the better part of about a year. It's been slightly out of reach for that entire period. I've hit 585, but I haven't hit 600 pounds yet.
I'm about to make a
so
compilation. We'll make a compilation of all the failed 600
yeah,
attempts.
I actually was thinking about doing that on my Instagram yesterday, but I
That'd
only
be
posted the one I
hilarious.
failed yesterday. But
That'd be
uh,
hilarious.
what was I going to say? Yeah, but I'll get it soon. It's coming. But yeah, maybe it would have helped me there. But yeah. Anyway, what were we talking about before carbs?
Going into
Yeah,
complex
complex carbs.
carbs.
Yeah, complex carbs maybe like a day in advance. If you have like a say you're training for like some event, whether it's like you're training for a powerlifting meet or you're training for like a marathon or you're training for, I think especially with running, this is really important to do, but you train for some event, like loading up on those complex carbs before, and then the simple carbs during the event are important, right? Because it's not like if you eat a complex carb, it's like your body needs to take time to digest that. Versus the simple carb, it's like you can eat that and then it goes almost right away into like fuel that you can use. So that's why simple carbs during training.
Especially during running, if you ever see like the marathon runners that, I
Yeah,
mean, if you see what they eat the day before, their lunch and dinner are just two giant bowls of pasta,
exactly.
simply because that will give it enough time for your body to break it down. And
Yeah,
right before the race, a little bit before, it will give them that energy that they're looking for to be able to complete that
yeah,
race.
and during the race too. So like a lot of those, I don't know if you've seen the little like energy gels column. Like that's a pretty common one to eat during the race. But what was I going to say next? Fuck. Yeah. Anyway, so that's pretty much carbs, and then the last big macronutrient aside from alcohol is fat. Fat is, like I said before, it's much higher in terms of calorie density. So it's better to incorporate this if you're going to be, trying to bulk, trying to gain weight. It's better to eat a little bit more fat. Um, I think people have the misconception that fat is something to be like demonized or it's some, inherently unhealthy or, oh, we want to limit fat. It's not necessarily the case. It's more of just understanding how it works and what it does and like kind of using it as a tool in your toolkit to meet your calorie goals. In particular, if you're really struggling to hit your calorie goal, like if you're too low and you're trying to move up to it, like adding in more fat is generally a great approach, and adding it in the context of like a fattier protein source can be a great way to get those extra calories in.
And especially with fats, it's very demonized. People think that fats are bad, you
Yeah,
shouldn't have them, but they're not realizing that the olive oil, the seed oils, all butter, everything they're cooking their food in is considered a fat source. And
yeah,
so they're not realizing the 4 tablespoons that they use to cook their chicken in.
right,
It's got to go somewhere. So this chicken's
yeah,
soaking it up,
yeah,
and they're not understanding that
yeah,
how
100%.
much fat source they're actually putting into their food they're eating.
100%, yeah. And I think too, sometimes people demonize the wrong kinds of fats. So like not all fats are created equal. In particular, seed oils, polyunsaturated fatty acids are kind of the technical name for them. But those are the fats that are a little bit, should try to steer away from those as much as possible, because essentially the chemical structure of it makes it so that it's very prone to oxidation, and like when those reactions happen, it can cause damage in your body. So um, I tend to stick to monounsaturated fats and saturated fats more. And I know people like saturated fat, like that's a buzzword for people, and people are afraid of saturated fats. But in my opinion, those are not the ones to be feared. The polyunsaturated fats are the ones to be feared. A lot of those are man-made, heavily processed, very unhealthy. So
In terms of gut health, in terms of
yeah,
regular health, in terms of taste, there's a massive difference between
exactly.
the polyunsaturated and saturated fats compared to saturated fats.
100%, 100%. So yeah, so that's fats. Alcohol we can touch on a little bit. So alcohol, generally, obviously, like the ideal amount is zero, but I mean, knowing me, knowing you, knowing people out
Yeah.
there, like everyone's going to have a drink from time to time. So it's, it's important to just talk about kind of the effects that it has. The biggest one that it has is it blunts protein synthesis. So essentially, your body is typically in the process of synthesizing protein into muscle tissue, especially after a workout. That's something we'll talk about more up here when we talk about meal timing. But what was I going to say about that? When you drink alcohol, it actually interrupts that process. So your body is going to be less capable of converting protein into muscle tissue. And so, what that does is it interrupts your gains, so to speak. It makes it more difficult to build muscle. So, alcohol, not necessarily your friend. In moderation, it's fine, but the more you have, the kind of more you're setting yourself up for failure. As far as like how much is a safe amount or a good amount, it really varies a lot person to person, depending on your height and weight and things like that. I think a general rule of thumb is to try to stay under 8 to 10 drinks a week at maximum. Obviously, there's special occasions. Sometimes things happen, and that's a little more than that. But generally, under that range per week is a good amount.
I mean, if you break it down and look at it, alcohol is an actual poison, and it really should be minimized / not drink at all. But in terms of, enjoying your life a little bit more, and you shouldn't be drinking every night, but you have friends over, you're watching some NFL football, having a beer or two, maybe 3 or 4. It's not going to diminish your gains so much unless that is a completely daily process.
Right.
But just minimizing it, trying not to over drink it or over consume is major. And there's the healthy versions of it, but in terms of it,
not really a healthy version. They're not really healthy.
They just claim lower calories. They're made with
all
natural ingredients, whatever the hell that's supposed to mean for alcohol.
Yeah, whatever.
Fermented yeast.
The lower calories is an interesting piece because a lot of alcoholic drinks, especially mixed drinks, are very high in added sugars. So I actually have an ebook that talks about this, but basically if you're sticking to drinks that are more, but a larger majority of the calories are coming from alcohol, like a lot of the best kinds of drinks to drink are like whiskey soda, vodka soda, that type of thing, where it's just the alcohol and then water, because that's obviously going to it's not going to have added sugars and it's not going to have other garbage in there, versus like a whiskey Coke or like a old fashioned or something like that is going to have a lot of extra sugar in there.
Yeah, and then especially, me personally, I don't like whiskey or vodka really, and so I do like beer, and I really hate to say it, there's really not a healthy beer. And they're all going to be at least 100 plus calories. I think there's one that's 90, but it's really not healthy in terms of it.
Or something,
yeah. And then, they push that seltzers do have one of like the lowest calorie count, but if you enjoy drinking TV Static, those are fine to drink. But typically, if you are going to drink alcohol, just minimize it and not try and not make it a nightly occurrence. Preferably push it to maybe once a week, twice a week, but you should really minimize how much you're consuming of it.
Right. I'm with you there, brother.
Unless it's Busch Light. It's over fucking drinking that every time.
Busch Lights are good. Busch Lights are good.
I'll cut that out. My
favorite. No, we don't have to cut it out, man. It's one of my favorite light beers. But anyway, let's keep it rolling. I think we hit calories and macros pretty hard. Honestly, that's like, if you get calories and macros right, by the way, just for people out there listening, like if you get that right, like this is probably like 90% of the battle, like right here.
I'd say it's honestly probably 95%.
Honestly, it's probably like 95% of the battle. Like if you did this right and then you completely fuck up here, like it's totally okay. So let's like focus, especially the calories and also the macros, particularly the protein here. Like that's gonna be big time for you for your progress. Micronutrients we could talk about a bit. This is definitely a bit more of a nuanced subject, I would say. If you really want to get a super accurate sense of like what micros you should be prioritizing and what you might be deficient in, things like that, it's probably best to get a blood test done. But as far as like just general principles, eating a wide variety of foods, fruits, veggies, natural, like whole food, naturally occurring foods, meats, things like that. A lot like this is going to have, you're probably going to cover most of your bases as far as micros go. And then, from there, like if you're concerned that you're deficient in a particular micro, or if if you want to know for sure, like you can always get that blood work done and see. In particular, like there's maybe like one or two that I'm thinking of. So one in particular that I know a lot of people do become deficient in the winter is vitamin D. So that's a good one. That's actually one I need to order soon because it's coming up on winter here. We're basically
Hey,
in winter.
you're behind. I've already got mine in.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, maybe I'm even a little behind. I don't know. So vitamin D3, just so people understand, like this is one that you absorb it from the sun. So certain foods I think have a little bit as well, but you mainly get it from the sun. And if in the winter, right, like a lot of it depends on where you live, but a lot of times it's much harder to get outside. And if you are getting outside, you're not getting nearly the same sun exposure. Maybe in the summer it's like you go to the beach and chill for an hour, you get a nice tan on, like you're absorbing a ton of vitamin D in that scenario. But in the winter it's a lot harder. So the good thing is there's supplements out there that you can get that cover it. Just look up like vitamin D3, probably just go on Amazon and buy one, and you'll get those benefits there.
But in terms of micronutrients, I don't really push heavily to any clients unless unless you get like that seasonal depression where they're not able to be outside, then I'll
Yeah.
suggest the vitamin D3. But other than that, if they're hitting their calories every day, hitting the correct macros, they might be deficient in one or two, but
yeah, exactly. Exactly.
not enough for me to want to worry about it.
That's how I see it as well. With micros too, like I think a lot of this is just focusing on, the old 80-20 principle, right? 80% of your calories should be whole food, healthy sources, and then the other 20% can be kind of whatever. Because I mean, it would be pretty hard to actually meet these other two goals. But say you were somehow able to like meet your calories and your macros, but you were just eating junk food all the time, then this would probably be a concern. But oftentimes it's going to be tough to hit these numbers consistently, especially the protein, if you're eating a ton of junk food. So oftentimes the micros do kind of take care of themselves. But to Colin's point, like if you are concerned that you're deficient in a micronutrient or two, like getting a blood test is not a bad call. Sweet. All right, we want to move on to meal timing.
Yeah, I feel like these next two we can hit.
Yeah, it's pretty quick. Yeah, because like again, like we said before, like these two are really where you want to be spending a majority of your time. That's why the pyramid gets smaller as you go. So let's talk about meal timing. So there's really a few effects. There's like probably two effects that I really want to talk about here as far as the timing goes. Maybe three if we want to talk about fasting a little bit. But number one is protein after your workouts. So if you want to get the quote unquote optimal amount of protein absorption for muscle gains, then you want to prioritize the protein after your workouts. I think the window is roughly, I mean, like it's a bit of a ballpark range anyway, but I think it's roughly like 30 minutes to an hour and a half or so after your workout. Get that protein in, helps speed up the recovery process. People don't realize too, like when you work out, you're actually destroying your muscles. And then the way that you build muscle is by you go to the weight room, you fatigue your muscles, you break down muscle fiber, and then your body senses that stimulus, it responds, assuming that you have the proper nutrition and everything, and it grows back stronger the next time. So basically, like having that protein right after your workout tends to be kind of the optimal window for this. Now, as far as like how much of a difference that actually makes, I personally don't think it makes a very big difference at all. Like I kind of not randomly eat my protein, but I definitely am not super intentional about timing it up after my workouts. And it's definitely like a smaller effect, if any, right? Like if you want to like really truly optimize the shit out of everything, then you could like very religiously stick to getting a lot of your protein in during that window, but it's not 100% necessary. And also like if the scenario is like, oh, I want to get like 50 grams of protein in right after my workout, and that's the only protein I'm getting today, versus like I'm going to get 200 grams of protein in today, but I'm going to just kind of spread it out however I feel like. That second scenario is much better than that first scenario. Like total protein consumption matters way more than the timing of it.
And especially with meal timing
Yeah,
or and frequency for this part, if your goal is to, lose weight, let's say,
yeah,
and you hardly ever eat breakfast, and if you do, it's typically, piece of toast and maybe an
yeah,
egg. But let's say you just decided to completely just have a full meal for breakfast,
yeah,
that will start to throw off your lunch and that'll throw off any snacks because your body's not used to having that much food, or it's not used to having the metabolism get kickstarted that quick.
yeah,
So it
yep,
becomes important, but typically if you're not someone that is that deep into it, it's not going to make a huge difference. But in
yeah.
terms of, I don't know where I was going with that. I lost my
You're
entire
good.
train of
You're
thought.
good. Yeah, you're fine. I think I understand where you're going. Basically, if you change up your eating schedule all of a sudden, your body is going to react adversely to it at first until it kind of adapts. Yeah. Another thing here on the meal timing piece. Some of you out there watching this might be in the boat where maybe you struggle with late night snacking, and you find yourself always really hungry late at night before you go to bed. Highly like almost like 9 times out of 10, that problem is just related to not timing your meals up well during the day, so that you kind of have this residual hunger that builds up throughout, and then you end up being really hungry later. And then what's going to be available later? It's not going to be healthy food; it's going to be junk food. So the solution to that is, a lot of times I've worked with clients in that boat who it's like maybe they don't eat breakfast, or maybe they don't eat breakfast and lunch, and they just start with dinner. I highly recommend in those cases that people try to more evenly space out the meals throughout the day, as opposed to just saving it all for the very end. But that's my 2 cents there.
I mean, especially if they do get that late night snacking, I think that can fall back under macros a little bit with
Yeah, I agree too.
not having a protein dominant dinner enough to where their body is still craving that little bit of
I'm
food
with
that
you
they're
there,
wanting. And
100%.
so they're not satiating the
Appreciating.
whatever. Can't pronounce it.
I know what you're saying. I say shit.
We all
Yeah.
understand. We all know what
You're
we're
good.
saying here. Yeah, but they're just
But
not prioritizing the protein there to get that fuller or get the feel fuller longer that they're wanting at that point.
facts. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, so that's meal timing there. And then, another one with meal timing that we kind of already covered was carbs before training, and like simple versus complex carbs. But we already went in depth into that, so I don't feel like we really need to cover it again. Cool. Want to move on to supplements? The roof of the pyramid, top of the pyramid.
Supplements are a scam.
Yes, I agree. I
That's
agree.
it. That's all we
In
need to
most
say.
cases. In most cases. There's a few good ones that maybe we should talk about, like protein. So the ones that I think are worth considering adding, are like number one, protein powder. If you're really struggling to get protein in your diet, and if you've tried some of these other fixes where you try to get, like chicken breasts and turkey and tuna and things like that, and like it's really just really hard for you to get the protein in, a protein shake or a protein supplement could be a good kind of fallback there. But that also almost, to me, it's kind of in the supplement category, but it's also kind of just in the macros category too, right?
Yeah.
Um,
But I mean, especially if they're going after that protein powder, there's a lot of protein powders that are just filled with sugar though. And
yeah, that's true. You got to make
they're
sure you check that. Yeah,
yeah. I mean, if it's not pretty much just pure protein whey isolate,
yep,
then it's more than likely going to fall more under supplement because it's filled with stuff that, it gives it that flavor they want, or
Right.
the
Yeah. This
the
is again.
Chips Ahoy brand, like,
Yeah.
come on.
Yeah.
We gotta be
Exactly.
serious here. There's no shot that Chips Ahoy brand is not filled with sugar there.
That's why I say prioritizing the real food as opposed to the protein. Or if it's like if they're using artificial. So like there are a lot of protein powders out there that do a pretty good job as far as the macros of like, the protein is high and like the fat and the carbs are very low, which is essentially what you're looking for with the protein supplement. But a lot of those also have artificial fillers, ingredients, things like that mixed in there to kind of make sure it looks good and tastes decent. So yeah,
And
that's why it's kind of a fallback option in my opinion. But
one thing that, if you don't really know what the ingredients are, you should shoot for, it should be in terms of total calories, one scoop should be roughly 90 to 110 calories. And
yeah,
that is the safe bet that that is a healthier one.
it's a
It's not
pretty
loaded with artificial flavors or sugars or a bunch of stuff that your body does not need.
yeah, definitely. I'm with you there. I'm with you there. That's a good rule of thumb. Um, yeah, and then yes, so that's protein powder. And then the other one I want to talk about is creatine. Was another good one to think about. So creatine, it depends on this one to me depends on the diet. I think a lot of people just kind of blanket recommend creatine to everyone, which in some cases it might not be that applicable. Like creatine is a naturally occurring substance that's found in some foods, particularly if your diet is higher in red meat, which mine definitely is. It's chances are you probably are actually getting a good amount of the creatine kind of target amount that you want to be getting. So the target amount for most people is around 5 grams. So if you know if you're able to if you're getting close to that with your food, then you probably don't need to supplement. If you do need to supplement, or if you do want to supplement, like basically the benefits you're going to see are like a slight increase in performance as far as strength and your performance in the gym and things like that. If you do want to supplement, there are a lot of good, safe, effective options out there. Like creatine is one of the most widely tested supplements that there is, so it's definitely like safe and effective. But in some cases, like you might actually be in a spot where you already are getting plenty of creatine, and so you don't need to supplement it per se. But for a lot of people, supplementing is you might notice a slight bump in performance if you do it.
Yeah, but I mean, with creatine, it is the most widely researched supplement by
Yeah.
hundreds of different scientists from
Yep.
all kinds of decades, and there's not been one bad study on it.
Yeah.
Outside of the fact that if you aren't drinking enough water, it can potentially harm your kidneys a little bit. But as
Yeah.
long as you are, drinking enough water a day, there's zero downside to taking creatine supplement.
100%. 100%. Yeah, exactly. It's a very safe. Like it's not if you get on creatine, it's not gonna have a negative effect. Basically, it's one other thing I think is important to mention about creatine is the loading phase and that whole concept. So a lot of these, like you might have heard of like the creatine loading phase, which is where instead of doing 5 grams a day, you do like 30 grams a day or something crazy for a little bit, and then you drop it down to 5. That is kind of a scam by the supplement industry, I will say, to get people to buy more of their products. So don't do that. If you want to start creatine, you just do the 5 grams a day or whatever the difference is between roughly between like the food you're eating and the where you want to be that 5 grams. But either way, I would not recommend doing the loading phase. You're just going to burn through more of the company's product and have to buy more sooner. So I would avoid that. But
In terms of other supplements, so like the fat burners, the
oh
greens,
yeah,
all of those, I mean, I hate to say it, they just don't work.
yeah,
They're,
100%.
they're just filled. It's just random ingredients thrown together saying that it works, and
Yep.
it's just a money marketing strategy that unfortunately a lot of people buy.
Yeah, 100%. I agree. I think a lot of those are pretty suspicious, to say the least. And also, some of them are like not as widely tested or well understood. So not only are you like not going to really get any benefit from it as far as the results, but also, you might be putting in some stuff into your body that you might not want to be putting in. So it's a little it's kind of, it's a slippery slope there with those. I would not recommend those.
And then in terms of all supplements, supplements only help you like 5 to 10%.
Not
And
even that.
so if you're not already hitting your calories every day, hitting your macros, then
Yep.
the supplements aren't going to provide you enough value. It's just going to be a money pit that you fall deep into.
Yep. 100%. 100%. I would even say less. I would say like 1%, but
Yeah.
depends on where you're at, I guess.
Yeah. But I mean, let's say you need 200 grams of protein a day and you're able to get 180 easily, and you want when to skip a protein powder, hit that over 20, that will help you. But if you're only at 80 grams, that 20 grams is not going to make a big enough difference for you to go spend $50 on a tub of protein powder.
100%. Yeah. And if you're trying to build muscle and you're not in a calorie surplus, and you're not eating enough protein, but then you're like, oh, I'm just going to eat creatine because this will help me build muscle. Like, you're really you're kind of stepping over dollar bills to pick up pennies at that point, in my opinion. So
it's not worth it. Really,
no.
supplements are not worth it unless you are already nailed down or almost nailed down to your calories and macros.
Yeah, that's why this pyramid is structured the way it is, right? You need to have all the levels below it kind of set up optimally so that the level above it can kind of function.
Yeah, completely.
Yeah. Cool. Well, yeah, guys, that is the nutritional hierarchy of importance. Thank you guys all for joining this. If you enjoyed the podcast, make sure you leave it a like. We'll be doing this probably every 2 weeks or so, Colin. Hopefully the next one. I know we had to take a little hiatus. Colin had a nose surgery done, which now he's recovered from, but we had to take a little bit of a hiatus. But we're back. We're going to do these consistently. We're going to get you guys some good value. So stay tuned for the next one.
And if you want to skip the entire pyramid, just take Tren.
You're correct. You could hop on Tren, and that would be the shortcut to your gains. But I do not advise that unless you're
don't do it.
A professional bodybuilder or something.
Just don't do it. It's not even worth it.
Anyway, cool guys. Well, thank you all for listening. We will talk to you again next time.